and it's sitting around in warehouses, being carefully hidden, being carefully concealed, but it's all well documented. And he's done a very professional job, footnoted it, showed you the sources. I got to tell you this story. Now, last program, I told you about a 12,000-foot elevation here in the Andes Mountains, where they've got this fantastic city over here with the ruins and so on, well documented by the Spanish when they got in there. They blew it up and destroyed most of it. Some of it, I mean, the site's still there. Most of the rocks are still there. They got pictures in the book here of the rocks. The tragedy of it was the destruction that was wrought by the Spanish. They just came in there and just tore it all to hell. Not exactly clear why they tore it all up. They didn't all have gold and silver in it, but much of it did, and they robbed it and stole from it. Did you know that there are pyramids in the world that are bigger than the Great Pyramid of Cheops? Now, if you're like me, you heard that the Great Pyramid of Egypt is the biggest pyramid in the world. Down in Mexico City, 40 miles out of town, there's a couple of pyramids called the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. I saw those as a kid. I was about 20 years old or so. I went down there and I looked at those pyramids, and my God, these two pyramids look just like the pyramids over in Egypt. How could these people over here in the New World be building pyramids that look just like the pyramids in Egypt unless they had had some kind of communication? I mean, I can see people building a pyramid, on both sides of the oceans, but you got to have, if they look alike, they got to look different, if they never had any communication. If they look exactly alike, well, then obviously one saw the other and copied it. I don't know who copied what from who, but I'm pointing out that these pyramids are all over the world. It isn't just here in the New World or in the Maya lands or the Aztecs and so on, but hell, these pyramids are in China. They're in Australia. They're in the United States of America. Did you know we got 9 pyramids over here in the United States of America sitting over in Illinois? I never read about those pyramids here in the United States when I went to school. I never heard a word about them. And one day my wife said, my wife is from Illinois, and she said, have you ever heard of the pyramids in Illinois? I looked at her like, pyramids? She says, yeah, they're about the same size as the Great Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt, and there's 9 of them in Illinois. And I looked at her like, lady, you got to be out of your mind. There's no pyramids in America. If there were, I would have heard about it when I went to school. And she said, well, turn left here. Let's go take a look at one. So we drove out into the countryside, and here's this great big mountain. There are parks. The state of Illinois has a park there. I climbed to the top of one of them. The top of the pyramid, the top of this pyramid in Illinois is 1/2 acre in size. That's the top. The top is 1/2 acre. It's bigger than your house. It's bigger than your lot for most of you people out there. I was looking on the computer last night, and we were taking a look at houses in the Los Angeles area, and there's lots, 7,000-foot lot, 8,000-foot lot, 6,000-foot lot. I mean, you people live on pieces of ground that aren't as big as the top of this pyramid. I'm not talking the bottom of the pyramid. I mean the top of it. And then yet it sits on acres and acres of land, and it's 400 feet tall, and it's built out of dirt, and somebody packed all that dirt up there. I'm telling you, boys and girls, that if you had to go out here and build that pyramid today, if you called the Caterpillar Tractor Company, you'd have to have a major contracting outfit like Guy F. Atkinson to come out there and build something like that. We look at it and we say, oh, well, just a bunch of Indians with a bunch of baskets carrying dirt stacked it up there. There's no Indian tribes around here ever claimed that they built that thing. It was there when they arrived. That's what they're telling them. Well, anyway, here, listen to this. The tallest building in the world until this century, until the 21st century, and still the most massive structure on Earth, is an ancient pyramid 120 stories high. 120 stories. All right, now the Great Pyramid is 450 feet high. That's 450 times 10 is 4,500 feet. Is that right? No. That's I think the Great Pyramid of Cheops, if I remember, is 450 feet divided by 10. Yeah, that's 45 stories. Now remember that the Twin Towers in New York, the Twin Towers, they're 110 stories tall. Remember that? I think they were 1,100 feet, as I recall, because there's 10 feet to a story, in round numbers. So you got 110 times 10. Yeah, they were 1,100 feet tall. All right. This pyramid is sitting in China today. Today, in China. Where they find all these great things every once in a while. Well, it stands on a long, desolate, flat stretch of land 40 miles west of the ancient capital, Xianfu, on an old dirt road, caravan trail, and crosses from Peking or Beijing they call it today, to the Mediterranean. About 2,000 feet at the base, it rises some 1,200 feet. All right, it's 2,000 feet at the base, and it rises 1,200 feet. 1,200 feet. The Great Pyramid in Egypt, 450 feet. This one rises 1,200 feet. There are actually 7 pyramids, flat-topped, with 3 carved giants resting along the outer edges. The 4 faces of the pyramids are, like so many ancient structures, aligned to the compass points. Traces of color remain on the sides, indicating that colors that were given to each side: east, aqua green; south, red; west, black; north, white; and on the flat tops, traces of yellow. A pair of American adventurers who roamed Asia between the 2 world wars, R.C. Anderson and Frank Shearer, were shown these pyramids, and Anderson visited Egypt's pyramids in 1970 and believed himself to be the only man living to have seen both the Chinese and the Egyptian pyramids. In 1946, a U.S. Army airplane crew rediscovered and photographed these pyramids from the air. Place 26 skyscrapers the size of the Empire State Building, and you have the volume of the largest Shensi pyramid. All right, you ever hear of that? I hadn't either. So I wanted to tell you. Some skyscrapers, heights, and constructions in China equivalent to 120 stories, Ecuador 60 stories, Egypt 48, Bermuda seabed 42, Italy 35, Iraq 30, Guatemala 23, India 22, Mexico 21, Kampuchea, Kampuchea 20, Arabia 20, and Turkey 20. Now these are all buildings or monuments in China, Ecuador, Egypt, Bermuda, Italy, Iraq, Guatemala, India, Mexico, Kampuchea, wherever that is, I can't tell you. If you want to check me out, Kampuchea, probably some new country in Africa, Arabia, and Turkey, 20-story tall buildings. Hell, we weren't building 20-story buildings until 1900. And they're still here. These structures, by the way, boys and girls, have withstood time for thousands of years. And it's thought that all of these structures are built before Noah's flood and survived the flood. Or they were built right after the flood in the period of time between Noah and the Tower of Babel and up to the time of Abraham, which would have been around 2000 BC. Now, some of these monuments went through the flood, I would guess. They survived the flood. I could be wrong about that. They may have all been built on this side of the flood, every last one of them. But my guess is that some of these things, especially up in the Andes Mountains, unless, of course, they had that technology after the flood and then it was destroyed after the flood, which this guy points out could well be the case. Now, this is the section on construction, large-scale construction. There's another section in here that's called construction techniques. It's chapter 17. There's 64 examples of construction techniques. He starts off by saying, it is a human impossibility, gasped Hyatt Verrill. And he's right, and yet it happened. The great mountains of the Peruvian Andes are awesome enough until you gaze up those extremely steep slopes, and you perceive the death-defying ruins perched on top of these mountaintops. The setting is terrifyingly wild. Mountains miles high, vanishing into the sky, notched with narrow ledges, slashed with ravines and bottomless gorges. Waterfalls of an awesome beauty plunge from these immaculate snowy peaks down into the damp, unknown depths of the canyons. So rare is the air that even the mules are obliged to stop every 10 paces to catch their breath. Here at the frontiers of the impossible, a vanished civilization set gems in stone, astonishing and astoundingly assembled polygonal walls suspended over the abyss. They carved practically vertical stairways up stupendous precipices. High in the clouds rises one acrobatic stairway of 64 steps, which had to be carved in a place where one could only get a toehold for support. Another comprises 600 steps. Just imagine that. And then here are the pictures of these stairways up these mountains. Now, these ingenious jewels, or jewelers in rock, ascended a dizzying mountain no wider than the blade of a sword, and topped it with watchtowers and walls pierced with lookouts. The mountain drops away so abruptly that if a workman slipped, his body would not hit the bottom for 3,000 feet. Today, on all sides, the ruins of temples, fortresses, and towers surmount the peaks and cling to the vertical sides of the canyons like ivy. Overlooking a waterfall, a splendid palace rises above the fierce abyss, impossible to reach. How was this palace built?